Sophie Cunningham gets a hard foul, going up for a layup. Everybody has seen it at this point from Chicago's DiJonai Carrington. Stephanie White, after the game, didn't stand up for Sophie, but rather said she had no problem with the hard foul. Carrington then goes to Threads and posts white privilege with an @ to the Indiana Fever. Yet another contentious moment that now feels like it can't even just be about the game. It's about race. It's about everything else. Caroline, how do we break this down?
What exactly is happening in the WNBA right now? DiJonai Carrington comes flying in and catches Sophie Cunningham across the neck with her forearm, gets thrown out of the game, and somehow the reaction from her own coach sounds like almost nothing happened. Tyler Marsh described it as an attempt to make a play on the basketball. Then came the flagrant 2 ruling, the confrontation afterward, and Carrington's white privilege social media post directed at the Indiana Fever. Naturally, fans started asking whether anyone was actually going to take responsibility for what unfolded, or whether the response would once again become an exercise in protecting everyone involved. Because once you watch the replay, hear what was said afterward, and see how carefully the coaching staff avoided condemning the incident, the controversy becomes much bigger than one foul. So let's go through the collision, the strange explanations, the social media fallout, and what the entire situation suggests about accountability inside this league.
Obviously, it would be easy for the outside of her folks, fans, to read something into a foul happening with Sophie Cunningham, just the way that she's been in the headlines lately. Did you get a sense that there was any extra emotion, anything like that coming into this game from your players? Did you guys have any internal conversations about that heading into this game?
No, we're fighting for our lives to try to make the playoffs. So DiJonai is a passionate player, just like most of our players on our team. And obviously,
The Chicago Sky and Indiana Fever were supposed to be playing a basketball game. But before long, the matchup became another example of why WNBA drama keeps overshadowing what happens on the scoreboard. At the center of everything was DiJonai Carrington, who came from behind during a transition opportunity and connected with Sophie Cunningham around the neck and facial area as Cunningham went toward the basket. Instead of the conversation being about rotations, shooting, defense, or the final result, everybody was suddenly discussing a violent-looking collision that immediately changed the tone of the night. Cunningham was already attacking the rim when Carrington arrived late, and once the replay started circulating, it became extremely difficult to argue that this was simply ordinary contact from a defender trying to stop a layup.
WNBA star Sophie Cunningham, already at the center of a fight over transgender participation, took a flagrant foul from an opposing player who was ejected from the game. Our Jan Crawford is following the story.
Here's Cunningham up ahead of the field.
It was a hard foul as the Indiana Fever's Sophie Cunningham went in for a layup. She took a hit across the face and neck that led to an immediate ejection for the Chicago Sky's DiJonai Carrington.
Cunningham had broken free in transition and was heading directly toward the basket, with a legitimate scoring opportunity when Carrington chased the play down from behind. But rather than arriving in position to challenge the shot cleanly, Carrington's arm came across Cunningham's upper body and neck area while Cunningham was moving toward the rim. The result was Cunningham being yanked off balance and sent hard toward the floor. Watching it in real time was uncomfortable enough, but the replay made the sequence look even worse because there was very little visible effort directed toward the basketball itself. The contact resembled a clothesline far more than a normal defensive contest, especially considering Cunningham was vulnerable and moving forward when the arm wrapped across her. There are plenty of ways to commit a hard basketball foul. Reaching around someone's neck while coming from behind is not normally one of them.
Gives her an absolute wind-up and smack in the face. She gets kicked out of the game, rightfully so, then goes on Threads, and she posts this. Oh yes, she calls it white privilege. Now keep in mind, the woman who did the assault and battery literally got kicked out of the game because she did a technical foul too. You can't do somebody in the face like that without getting kicked out of the game. That could have been any player, but she said white privilege because
officials went to the monitor, reviewed the sequence, upgraded the call to a flagrant 2, and immediately ejected Carrington from the game. Considering where the contact landed, how forcefully Cunningham was knocked down, and how little realistic opportunity Carrington had to make a clean defensive play, the ejection looked less like an extreme punishment and more like the minimum response available under the circumstances. Cunningham was already near the basket, and Carrington was arriving from behind, meaning the possibility of successfully blocking the attempt without dangerous contact was disappearing by the second. Once the arm came across Cunningham's neck and upper body, the officials had a straightforward decision to make. They examined the footage, determined the foul was unnecessary and excessive, and removed Carrington from the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a hard foul. I don't think that DiJonai intentionally came out to get her across the neck like she did, but it did happen, and I thought it was the right call. But, you know, one of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man. She's going to compete. Nobody's going to go walking in for a layup. And so I don't oppose the hard foul. But I also don't think that she intentionally went for the net.
The truly puzzling part came afterward, when Chicago Sky coach Tyler Marsh stepped in front of reporters and offered an interpretation that seemed completely disconnected from what viewers had just watched. Marsh said that from his perspective, Carrington appeared to be making an attempt on the ball and suggested he did not think the play deserved a flagrant 2 designation. He also acknowledged that he had not gone back and watched the replay after the incident. That explanation immediately created another controversy, because anyone who saw the footage could recognize how far Carrington's arm was from actually making a meaningful play on the basketball. She was not positioned to swat the ball away, redirect the attempt, or cleanly interfere with the layup. The most obvious contact occurred around Cunningham's neck and upper body. Describing that sequence as a legitimate play on the ball requires viewers to ignore what is directly visible in the replay. Marsh delivered the explanation calmly, but the video made his version increasingly difficult to defend.
This game individually, we didn't come into this one with any more or less juice than we've had the last 4 since the since the All-Star break. Like our mindset is trying to win games as a player and as a coaching staff, and so that's where it was at going into this game, and that's where it'll be moving forward. You hope that Sophie's okay and that nobody's severely injured. At the same time, it's not. I don't think there is ill intent on our end. So.
The questions became even more uncomfortable when reporters brought up Carrington's social media activity following the ejection. Carrington had posted the words "white privilege" while tagging the Indiana Fever, and Marsh responded by saying he was only becoming aware of the post at that moment and would deal with it afterward. By then, people understandably started wondering how so many important details from the evening had apparently escaped the coach's attention. He had not reviewed the replay of the night's most controversial foul, claimed the play initially looked like an attempt on the ball, and then said he knew nothing about a public post that was already spreading rapidly online. Maybe that was genuinely the case, but the sequence created the appearance of selective awareness at exactly the moments when stronger answers were required. Cunningham made it clear through her own reaction that she did not view what happened as ordinary physical basketball. Even the officials apparently considered her immediate response understandable in light of the hit she had just taken. Yet across the court, the public messaging continued softening the incident instead of confronting what the footage showed.
I would actually say that this is black privilege, to be totally honest with you, because her posting this white racist comment right after assaulting Sophie Cunningham on the court is actually black privilege, because she knows the WNBA won't do a single thing of significance about it. And imagine if the roles were reversed. If Sophie made a comment similar to this, then she'd likely never play again. And actually, we just saw this from Coach Sandy Brondello. She got disciplined for making, I believe, a pretty innocent, maybe, offhand comment about talking about Angel Reese and saying that she's a protected species. She was...
Calling the foul a flagrant 2 was not some outrageous decision from officials looking to create drama. Cunningham was moving toward the rim in a vulnerable position when an arm came across her neck from behind. That is precisely the type of contact referees are expected to examine seriously, because the consequences can go far beyond losing possession or giving up free throws. Carrington already has a reputation among fans for playing an extremely physical style, which makes clear boundaries even more important when a play crosses from aggressive defense into dangerous contact. Marsh's argument that it appeared to be a basketball play in real time becomes harder to accept each time the replay is shown because the ball was already difficult to reach, and Cunningham's upper body became the point of contact instead. Then the white privilege post introduced an entirely different controversy at exactly the moment when Chicago needed to calm the situation rather than intensify it. Marsh saying he had not heard about the post until reporters asked him about it also sounded unusual in an era when professional organizations have communications employees, social teams, and staff following developments almost instantly.
Basketball side of things, I think the flagrant 2 on DiJonai Carrington was totally and completely fair. Again, I'll go back to the pool report, and the officials said the criteria for a flagrant foul penalty 2 was met since the contact was deemed unnecessary and excessive to a player in a vulnerable position. I would agree with all of those things. There was a wind-up. Sophie Cunningham was jumping up and was in a vulnerable position. So take all bias out of it. Take race out of it. Just looking at the basketball play.
What made the aftermath especially frustrating for critics was how quickly the response shifted toward minimizing what had happened, rather than simply acknowledging the obvious. Marsh could have said that the officials reviewed the play, made their decision, and Carrington needed to avoid putting herself in that situation again. Instead, he questioned whether the foul deserved the flagrant 2 classification, while admitting he had not watched the replay. That leaves Cunningham, the player who actually took the contact and hit the floor, listening to explanations that make the entire incident sound less severe than it appeared on video. The argument that this was simply tough basketball becomes more difficult to sustain when multiple angles show where the arm landed and how Cunningham was pulled down. The WNBA constantly promotes elite skill, athleticism, competition, and professionalism, but incidents like this force viewers to ask whether the standards being advertised are consistently enforced. When a player can be ejected for serious contact, immediately create another controversy online, and then receive public support from a coach questioning the call, fans naturally wonder whether accountability depends on who is involved.
Breaking news right now coming out of the DiJonai Carrington situation. That's what I was up here reading while she was talking. DiJonai Carrington has just dropped a tweet moments ago, and in this tweet she pretty much sounds like she's trying to backtrack her comments. So DiJonai Carrington about an hour ago said, "I've never once claimed that the assessment of the foul was white privilege. That was your assumption.
Use some basic critical thinking when listening to Marsh's explanation, because the wording becomes even more interesting when compared with how coaches normally discuss dangerous plays. In many other situations, coaches are willing to say their player made a poor decision, arrived late, or needs to control the physicality better. Here, almost every answer came with another layer of uncertainty. Marsh had not reviewed the replay. He was not convinced it deserved a flagrant 2. He had apparently not seen the social media post either. That cautious language creates the impression that avoiding direct criticism of Carrington was the priority, even while Cunningham's safety and the integrity of the competition were being debated publicly. Cunningham is hardly someone who believes basketball should be completely free of contact. She has been involved in hard fouls herself and has received punishment for crossing the line. But there is still a difference between competing physically and arriving from behind with an arm around an opponent's neck. A strong defensive play requires timing, positioning, and some realistic attempt to challenge the basketball. The controversy exploded because the explanation afterwards seemed to describe a much cleaner play than the footage actually showed.
This is why I tell you all the damn time, it's hard for me to respect a lot of the people that cover this league, because they're all true colors always come out. And I'd rather err on the side of caution. Like, nah, you might say one nice thing, but nah, I kind of have a feeling of who you are, really. Oh, wow, you said a nice article. Nah. I'm gonna refrain from giving you too much praise, because I have a feeling this is the type of person that you are.
And then we return to the social media response, which Marsh maintained he had not yet reviewed. Professional sports in 2026 moves at internet speed. Teams employ communication staff, digital employees, public relations personnel, and people whose entire job involves monitoring what is being said publicly about the organization and its players. Carrington's post was not hidden somewhere obscure. It was public, it referenced white privilege, it tagged the Indiana Fever, and it appeared in the immediate aftermath of her ejection. So when the head coach said he was hearing about it from a reporter, people naturally questioned whether that ignorance was genuine or simply the safest answer available at the podium. Saying you have not seen something gives you permission to postpone judgment. You can promise to review it later, avoid an uncomfortable statement in the moment, and hope attention eventually moves somewhere else. Meanwhile, Cunningham had already experienced the physical consequences on the court, and the contrasting reactions after the game ensured the controversy would outlive the final buzzer. Even the flagrant 2 penalty starts to feel limited when coaches publicly suggest the incident was ordinary basketball because players inevitably learn how seriously organizations in the league treat these boundaries.
Circle, then accuse her of systemic advantage, systemic racism. Sophie is the victim of the foul and the defendant in the narrative. That inversion only works if the media runs it for you. Enter Jamel Hill and Kari Champion. These are not the independent columnists who happen to land in the same place. They are best friends. They share a platform. They co-host. And within hours of Carrington bloodying Sophie Cunningham, both of them were on the line for Carrington.
Carrington's reputation for extremely physical basketball only increases the importance of drawing a clear line when contact becomes unsafe. If every dangerous sequence is brushed aside as nothing more than a hard foul, eventually the next incident may become even more serious. Marsh's combination of not reviewing the replay and not knowing about the social media post produced an almost remarkable level of separation from the 2 biggest controversies surrounding his own team that evening. Whether intentional or not, that approach allowed every uncomfortable question to be delayed. The foul could remain something he supposedly needed to rewatch before judging. The post could remain something he supposedly needed to investigate before addressing. But viewers did not have to wait. The replay was already everywhere. Screenshots of the post were circulating, and Cunningham had already hit the floor hard enough for officials to eject Carrington. Everything that followed became less about discovering what occurred, and more about controlling how the incident would be described. Calling it a legitimate attempt on the basketball forces people to pretend Carrington's arm was somehow tracking the ball, even though the strongest contact clearly occurred around Cunningham's upper body.
Cunningham making the layup. DiJonai would have tried to make that play on anybody making a layup because that's what she's done throughout her career. So I just want to make it known. It wasn't.
Y'all know I love Andrea Carter and want to help her with a conversion, but I'm just sorry. She's an idiot here. She's lying here. She's protecting the cult, the LGBTQ crowd. She's part of that inner circle, part of that sisterhood. She's gay.
Fans watching live and people seeing the replay afterward largely formed their own opinion before any post-game press conference could reshape the story. The enormous gap between what the footage appeared to show and how Marsh described it became almost as controversial as the foul itself. Whenever a coach's public explanation seems incompatible with clear video evidence, viewers naturally begin deciding for themselves why that explanation sounds so different. Each replay makes the softer interpretation harder to maintain because the path of Carrington's arm and its distance from the basketball are visible. Then the white privilege post pushed the conversation outside the boundaries of basketball by attaching racial language to a play that officials had simply evaluated according to foul rules. Cunningham responded by rejecting that framing and emphasizing the physical contact itself, noting that she has faced punishment for similar conduct and accepted those consequences. That willingness to acknowledge disciplinary standards stands in sharp contrast with a response built around minimizing the foul and postponing any reaction to the post. Protecting a player from immediate criticism might make organizational sense in the short term, but repeatedly doing so can create larger credibility problems. Fans invest in leagues because they expect the rules to matter regardless of which jersey someone is wearing.
Cunningham has literally been dragged. She's been called every name but a child of God. Coaches have come out and spoken against her. Fans have come out in the name of calling Sophie Cunningham anti-trans and transphobic. It's not far-fetched to say that the league itself in totality does not like Sophie Cunningham. And yet, after intentionally grabbing Sophie Cunningham around her neck and getting ejected for that, DiJonai runs to Twitter to say the reason why she was ejected was because of the white privilege Sophie Cunningham, a white, straight female, carries in a basically 80% black, almost 90% LGBTQ-led league.
On the substance of the play itself, Carrington's ejection was the appropriate decision. The contact was unnecessary, excessive, and delivered to an opponent whose position made the collision especially dangerous. A flagrant 2 ruling did not manufacture controversy. It recognized what had already happened. Recasting the foul as everyday physical basketball requires overlooking where the arm landed, how Cunningham was taken down, and how little opportunity Carrington had to make a legitimate play on the ball. The replay still exists. Carrington's post still exists through screenshots. Marsh's comments still exist. Together they document not only the original incident, but also the way everyone involved responded once the game ended. Viewers saw one version on the court: Cunningham driving toward the basket, Carrington arriving from behind, dangerous contact around the neck, a hard fall, a review, and an ejection. Then they heard a softer version afterwards suggesting it may simply have been an effort to contest the basketball. The distance between those two stories is why the controversy continues. An arm across the neck from behind is extremely difficult to describe as a clean basketball attempt. The flagrant 2 was a justified response, and saying the key evidence had not been reviewed only made the avoidance of a clearer answer even more noticeable.